All right. So today we're looking at distributive property, which is a fancy way of saying how we're dealing with coefficients on brackets. So questions like this. Oops. Okay. I'm going to show you how to do this type of question, but I'm also going to show you kind of what it means in real life. So let's think back. I had before said that y was representative of the width of my cell phone. Okay. Let's say I measured, I don't know, my textbook. Okay. This is my phone. This is my book. Let's say I measured it using my phone. So maybe it's two phones, and then like, I don't know, 4 centimeters extra. So the way I would write that is 2y plus 4. That's the width of my book. Okay? That's the expression for it. But what if I had 2 books? How wide would it be across? You probably realize that like it's the exact same again. This is going to be 2y plus 4 again, so we can just add those together. But what if it was like 10 books? This is actually where it gets kind of tricky. So the way we're going to do it is we think of it this way. This is what the book is, 2y plus 4. So what if instead I multiplied that whole thing by, let's say, the 10 here? The way we would do that is I would write 10 times the 2y plus 4. Remember, this 2y plus 4 was how wide the book was. And then the 10 is how many books I have. It's getting kind of complicated, but that's basically what we're doing. So now what we have to do is we have to actually do the multiplication. The way this works is we do something I call rainbows. So we take the number, the coefficient that's right here outside the bracket. And remember, when it's next to a bracket, that means multiply. So I'm going to take that 10, and I'm going to multiply it by both things inside the bracket. Let's do this one at a time. So the first thing I'm going to do is 10 times 2y. Because remember, there were 2 phones for each book, and there's 10 books, so I do that times 10. Then I'm going to add, because we had adding here before, I'm going to do 10 times the 4 extra centimeters. Because each book, let's do this in blue actually. Each book had that little bit of 4 centimeters extra at the end. I have to multiply it by all the 10 books. So when we do that math, we get 10 times 2y gives me 20y. And then 10 minus 4 gives me 6. And that's my final answer. That is how long 10 books would be. 20 cell phones plus 6 extra centimeters at the end. Oh, I'm sorry. It was plus. My bad. So that should be 40. That makes more sense. 10 plus 4, or 10 times 4 gives me 40. Okay? So it's 20 cell phones long plus 40 extra centimeters at the end. That's the basics of understanding how this works. Now I want to show you how to deal with these tougher questions as you get them. Okay? This was the handout I gave. I'm going to quickly go through some of the easy and then hard examples. So if I have a question like this, 4x plus 2, I do 4 times x gives me 4x. 4 times 2 gives me plus 8. And that's the final answer because I can't simplify this anymore. Next, when we have this, it's a little trickier. When there's a minus in front of it, it's actually like a minus 1. So that means I'm going to do the minus 1 times 3 plus x. So minus 1 times 3 gives me negative 3. Minus 1 times plus x gives me negative x. If we do this next one, negative 2 times x gives me negative 2x, not too tricky. Negative 2 times negative 3 gives me plus 6. Because remember, when you do a negative times a negative, it turns into a positive. This row, I'm just going to do this middle one. This one's where it gets a little tricky. 2x times x plus 2x times 3. Remember, when you do x times x, it turns into x squared. So what's going to happen with this, 2x times x, it's like there's a 1 in front of it. We do the 2 times the 1, gives me 2. The x times the x gives me x squared. For the next part, 2x times 3, that's just 6x. Let's do one more of those just to make sure we get it. 3x times 2x, that's going to be 6x squared. 3 times 2 was 6. X times x was x squared. Now I'll do the 3x times 6, so that gives me 18x. Be careful, a lot of students forget the x because they do the 3 times 6, but there was an x in what we were multiplying, so we have to include that still. These last ones get a little trickier. This is where we have to be careful about what's going on. Let's do this one at a time. So we'll do 4x times 2x gives me 8x squared. 4x times negative 3y gives me negative 12xy, because x times y is xy. The next part's tricky, and be very careful. Don't write minus yet. I'm going to multiply these out and write what they give me as my answer. So let's do the negative 2 times 5x gives me negative 10x. Then I do the negative 2 times 3y gives me negative 6y. This is my final answer. You always have to check to make sure if you could add anything together and collect like terms. But none of these are the same. X squared, there's no x squareds. Xy, there's no other xy's. X, there's nothing. Y, there's nothing. That's it. Last one we'll do, actually that's okay. That's like the basics of how to do it. And the answers were down here so we can check. So that's how we do distributive property, rainbows. We spread things out and do multiplication by every single thing in the bracket. We're eventually going to do tougher ones where it looks like this. We're not doing those yet, but these ones work very similar way. So that's why we have to learn the basics first. And that's it.